Oh my gosh, yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are back in New York City. And I thought I would kick today off with the most touristy place I could think of. You may recognize this building from a little show about nothing. It's Monk's Cafe from Seinfeld. Well, that's its name in the show. In real life, as you can see, it's called Tom's Restaurant. What's weird is in the early episodes of Seinfeld, you can actually see it saying Tom's Restaurant. But as the show progressed a little bit, they started cutting off the Toms there and just kind of showing it like that. What's really weird is once they decided to give it a name, they called it Monk's Cafe, when clearly they show the giant word restaurant 1,800 times. Why not Monk's Restaurant, huh? Weird. It's one of the few Seinfeld locations actually located in New York City. Not the inside, they didn't use the inside, but they definitely showed this exterior 1,800 billion times. Even the outside of Jerry's apartment was apparently located in LA, so it's nice to see a Seinfeld location actually in New York, especially because when I think of New York, Seinfeld is one of the first things that pops into my head. Sadly, Cosmo Kramer is not here. Look at that. As you can see, no resemblance to its fictional counterpart on the inside. And apparently the people who own the restaurant, same family that's owned it since 1940 by the way, had no idea that it was being shot for a TV show at first, let alone maybe the most famous sitcom of all time. Oh yeah, Seinfeld's definitely one of the first things I think of when I think of New York City. But the other one that jumps into my head immediately when I think of New York is Ghostbusters. So let's see if we can hunt down some of those spots. The movie opens with shots of the famous New York Public Library and one of these ominous lions out front. There's a librarian pushing books through the world-famous Rose Reading Room, and then she goes down to the basement, which, side note, was filmed in LA, and gets a little spooked by what she sees. Let's see if we can go take a look, but we have to be very quiet. It is a library after all. Okay, let's go this way. This is the beautiful Rose Reading Room, where we see the librarian pushing the books before she goes downstairs and sees a ghost. After that librarian gets thoroughly spooked, we finally see the Ghostbusters logo, and when it fades out, we've come all the way across town. Right here to Columbia University. Look at that statue down there of, I'm assuming, Columbia? The logo fades out to a shot of the back of that exact statue's head. Pretty crazy how much this looks like it did in the 80s. Not too much has changed. Ooh, here's the front view of that statue. I don't know if you can tell, but it's sitting in front of the Columbia University Library. Kind of weird where they went from one library to another. Kind of awkward being at this spot because there's a lot of students and they seem like they're concentrating. It's very eerily quiet out here. Anyway, the next shot we see is over this way. In the movie, this building right here played the Weaver Hall Department of Psychology. The plaque was right there on this little column, and I think the angle in the movie is right about here before we go inside and meet Peter Venkman. That's so crazy. That's where the plaque was. In reality, this building is Havemeyer Hall. I think it's a lecture hall. It's definitely not the Department of Psychology. Anyway, Peter Venkman's doing some questionable science in there when good old Ray, played by Dan Aykroyd, goes in there and interrupts his experiment to bring him back down to the New York Public Library. All right, finally, Ray and Peter are down here at the library. They're going inside, and we have to be really quiet. And they're back inside the Rose Reading Room, where they meet Egon right in the back of this place. Typical scientist Egon is listening to some equipment down on the floor over here when they drop that book and startle him. And then the three Ghostbusters cruise down the library towards the information desk. This thing right here, where the librarian was laying inside. Then eventually, of course, they go downstairs, see the ghost for themselves, and run out of the building. We can't run. We need to tiptoe out. We have to leave a little more quietly, but the Ghostbusters burst out this door and ran down these steps. It was their first encounter with a real ghost. Next up, where would we go but back to Columbia University? You can see this flagpole in the background when it comes back to the university. And then Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd come walking down this path past this lonely tree here. And of course, this is where Venkman's making fun of Ray, because when they crept up on the ghost, he just said, "Get her." I know it's just a walkway, but this is actually a pretty important Ghostbusters spot, because it's right along this walkway during this scene where Egon tells the guys he thinks he can theoretically trap a ghost. And of course, it's right after this when they head back into the Department of Psychology that they find out they've all been fired. In the final shots at the university, we see Dan Aykroyd telling Bill Murray's character, "This is a major disgrace. Forget MIT or Stanford. We're done." And this is awesome. This is the exact spot where Bill Murray was sitting, kind of leaned up against this little sort of pedestal thing here, having some hooch. I mean, you're already fired. Why not? This grate was definitely not here during the movie, this weird fence thing here, but this is definitely the spot, the exact spot where they decide to go into business for themselves. Which means this is the spot where the Ghostbusters were born. That is some pretty cool history. Okay, and we're done with Columbia University, which is kind of nice because just the sheer silence of this place and all the students walking around staring at us for checking out Ghostbuster spots is starting to weird me out. Time to head to basically the complete opposite side of Manhattan to see one of the most iconic spots in film history, the Ghostbusters Firehouse. Oh, we're almost there. And here it is? Uh-oh. Well, this is unexpected. That's definitely not the view of the Ghostbusters Firehouse that I was expecting, but it's definitely there behind that scaffolding. If you look close, you can just make out some hard hats right above that sign on the corner. See those guys? They're working on hook and ladder number 8 right now, also known as Ghostbusters HQ. Wow. You know what? I'm still really excited about this. I didn't really catch the first round of Ghostbusters Mania, but by the time I was a little older, the sequel came out. And the original had come out on home video, so Ghostbusters was all the rage, not to mention the Ghostbusters cartoon. Dude, we had tons of action figures. We had the Ecto-1. Friends of mine had the Firehouse. There was a whole playset of this Firehouse. I didn't have one. Dude, the toy version of this Firehouse was the toy to have back in the 80s. One of the first toys I can ever remember my parents getting us. It was expensive for them at the time and really exciting for us. Was a couple of proton packs with like nerfy little bullet things that kind of stuck out of them, little noodle things. Dude, I wore that thing constantly. Scaffolding or no scaffolding, this is so freaking epic for me, you guys. Kind of a bummer for you guys. I don't know if you can really see. It's sort of transparent in real life. Kind of harder to see on the camera. I've got to get a little bit closer. Oh yeah, look at that epic firehouse door. This is where the Ecto-1 comes shooting out and blasting its way around this corner. This is so legendary. This is so epic. Wow, I cannot believe I'm standing here. I've got to touch it. I've got to... That song is going to be stuck in my head for the rest of the day. What the heck is this? Oh, heck yeah, that is amazing.
I ain't afraid of no ghosts.
This is so amazing. Look, this is where they first pulled up the Ecto-1 when it was all black. And Ray is all stoked about the car, even though it needs a lot of work. But dude, they pimped out that Cadillac because that thing looks sweet. This is so crazy. This is so surreal standing right here. For the interior of the firehouse, they actually used a similar looking firehouse in Los Angeles. So even though I happen to know that Hook and Ladder number 8, this fire department right here, has a Ghostbusters 2 sign that they can hang out in front of this place that we're not going to get to see today, I'm still okay with it because they didn't really film in here anyway. I do wish we could take off this scaffolding though, you know, just for a little while, just for a peek. Look at this, blows my mind right here. Look here on the side of the building. You can actually see this painted right here on the edge of the building in the movie, and it's weird because it's still here. I mean, they filmed that movie in 1983, 1984. They've got to have kept that up on purpose, man. They've got to have touched that up. That's amazing. Let's see this side entrance.
It's right around the corner.
As we know. Oh, here it is. It's right over here. Let's just see here. Anyone home? Egon? Ray? Dr. Venkman? No Ghostbusters left. Ironically, just the ghosts of movies past. Dude, that is pretty darn sweet. Could choose to get bummed out about all the scaffolding and the construction, but instead I choose to not to do that. Dude, this is so awesome. Bucket list item? Check. Although, I'll have to come back one day when the scaffolding is gone. Yes, that is so epic. Maybe not the perfect circumstances to see it under, but still, that is so awesome. I'm not gonna hunt down every little Ghostbusters spot in Manhattan because there's too many little ones and I've already spent basically the entire day going up and down this island. But there are a few more on the list. First though, while I'm in this part of town, I'm gonna have to leave Ghostbusters to the side just for a little bit and head up to another iconic location getting in New York, someplace that as a child I always dreamed of going. This McDonald's. Dude, my whole childhood, I just wanted to come right here. You may be asking yourself, why would you want to go to McDonald's? Well, actually, I didn't want to go to McDonald's, but this didn't always used to be a McDonald's. According to the internet, this McDonald's was once Pete's Luncheonette from the movie Muppets Take Manhattan. There's a few epic movies I think of when I think of New York at all. Ghostbusters is obviously one of the big ones, and the other one, seriously tying for first place, is the Muppets Take Manhattan. You guys remember Pete's, right? That's where the Muppets decide that they're hungry, they go in to get some soup. All the other Muppets decide to leave Kermit behind because they're too much of a burden on him while he's trying to sell his Broadway show. And Kermit ends up getting a job here with Jenny, Pete's daughter. Oh, that Jenny. She was something else. Look at this. It looks completely different now than it did in the movie, but almost everything I've read said that this was the spot right here. You would have had your weird little side entrance to Pete's right on this side. Right over in this area over here, they had a couple of phone booths set up. And you'll notice if you look at the outside shots of Pete's that you can't really see through the windows. There's curtains, there's stuff in the way. That's on purpose. This little space here was way too small to accommodate all those Muppets in the space they needed for Pete's. So they had a set built somewhere else of the interior with, 4-foot holes for all the Muppet performers to stand in. This is crazy. Hardly anyone ever remembers the Muppets Take Manhattan, but it is a seriously ridiculously funny movie. And part of it was shot right here on the corner of Varick and Downing Street. Later on in the movie, when Kermit the Frog has amnesia and all the other Muppets can't find him, they're getting down on their luck, they're getting bummed out, they're getting ready to start the show without him. Amnesia Kermit, who now thinks his name is Phil, is walking out here with Bill and Gil and Jill, those other frogs, and they walk along here until they come outside of Pete's and say, how about a new place for lunch, This part of the building, the old janky brick part with the old crazy cluster of businesses, looks very similar to the way it did in the early 80s, but Pete's sadly is no more. It's not a very big space, and to be honest with you, I don't know whether it was actually a real diner or a bar or anything. I can't find any more information out about old Pete, so if anybody out there has any info, let me know. The Muppets are one of my favorite things of all time. Star Wars, the Muppets, Back to the Future, Ghostbusters, these are all top tier things for me. Not to mention the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and look, oh my gosh, it's the ooze! The Ninja Turtles ooze is on its way down to the sewer to change Splinter and the Floor Turtles into a ninja fighting team. Wow, they're heroes in a half shell, and they, like the ooze, are green. I can't find 122 and an 8. Where the heck is 122 and an 8? Gosh, Pete was one of the greatest characters of all time. Hey, I tell you what is, big city, live, work, but is not city open, only peoples. Peoples is peoples. No is buildings. It's tomatoes, It's peoples. It's dancing. It's music. It's potatoes. So, peoples is peoples. Okay? Best motivational speech of all time. That's blowing my mind. I always wanted to go there. You know why Pete's isn't here today? It's because they had a serious rat problem in the kitchen. They had to close down. Ugh, hope they got that fixed before McDonald's opened. All right, speaking of Muppets Take Manhattan, if you've ever seen the movie, do you remember the part where Kermit has like a fake afro on and he goes in, he tries to sell the show to some guy named Lenny. He goes, it's Boffo Lenny, Socko Lenny, call me, you do lunch, your people call my people, the whole thing. Well, in the very next shot, we see that fountain over there in the distance, the one past the horses and carriages, and then right over here across the street with the statue of William Tecumseh Sherman in the background, Kermit comes walking along from right to left, right in front of a bench with a sun-tanning Statler and Waldorf, both named after famous New York hotels, by the way. Anyway, right behind this fountain, which I think, by the way, is called the Pulitzer Fountain, like the prize, Kermit the Frog finds Jenny sitting here waiting for him. This is what that spot looks like today. Look at that. This is roughly the bench Jenny was sitting on. You can tell if you compare the pictures that the background is exactly the same. The trees have gotten quite a lot bigger, and the benches are actually different benches, but they're more or less located right in the same places as the benches back in the Muppets Take Manhattan. You then see Kermit walking along this way, and in the background of Kermit and Jenny talking, you can see that building over there. Very, very distinctive. Anyway, Kermit and Jenny are sitting roughly on this bench right over here, and that's when the funny begins. Because right across the street behind them, someone is watching. It turns out Miss Piggy has been keeping an eye on Kermit the Frog, and we see her behind some set-up planters right here here, right in front of this stonework. But as Kermit and Jenny continue talking, we see Piggy kind of scoot over here across the street in front of that department store over there, Bergdorf Goodman. In the movie, there's some scaffolding set up over there and a couple of construction workers working on stuff. This is right about the spot where Miss Piggy starts hiding behind the construction stuff to start spying on Kermit, and the construction workers start catcalling her. It's actually really hard to pinpoint this exact spot because in the movie, Miss Piggy is standing in front of a window and nothing really lined up until I realized that they had changed the window to this door area right over here, and the door you're seeing in the background on the right-hand side is the door that woman is standing in front of. At first, I still wasn't convinced that this is the spot where Piggy was standing until I noticed some very distinctive markings up in that stonework. See that crack right there behind the bottom of the lantern? You can see it in the movie. This is the spot. This is where those rude construction workers are talking to Piggy going, "Hey, baby, where you going? Hot mama, pretty in purple, oh yeah." Which is a very rude thing that no one should ever do to any woman, but especially not Miss Piggy. She's ignoring them at first, but as Frog and Human Girl continue to talk over here next to the fountain, Piggy's becoming more and more enraged. I'm not really doing this scene justice because I have a much wider angle lens than those zoom lenses they're shooting across the streets with in the movie, but you get the basic idea. They actually shot that scene with a remote control Kermit the Frog, which was very, very, very high tech for the early 80s. And when Kermit tells Jenny, "I believe you're going to be a famous fashion designer one day," she reaches over and hugs him. Oh, that's the last straw for Piggy. The guys over there are still catcalling her, making kissy noises at her, and she sees Kermit give Jenny that hug and vice versa. She bends this giant metal pipe and starts beating a dumpster with it and screaming out here. Of course, Kermit and Jenny can't help but hear that. But just like now, when Kermit asks, "What's that?" some cars got in the way. They couldn't see Piggy, and Jenny says, "It's just New York." Kermit goes, "Oh, okay." Dude, that's amazing. The Muppets Take Manhattan filmed right here. Right in Grand Army Plaza in front of the Pulitzer Fountain, right in front of the fabulous Plaza Hotel. New York's most exciting hotel experience, but we'll talk about that later. All right, I'm losing daylight here. I gotta pick up the pace. We'll just cut over through Central Park here real quick. Oh, and there it is. I see it. We're back to Ghostbusters. That is Dana and Lewis's apartment building in the movie. 55 Central Park West, also known to the locals and in the movie as Spook Central. Now you'll notice that in real life, the top of that building is much different than it was in Ghostbusters. And that's because they had a huge set where they filmed that climactic showdown with Gozer up on the top of there with the fake gargoyles and whatnot. That was all on a Hollywood soundstage. But honestly, they could have kept the real top to that building because it looks just as sinister as the one in the movie. And because of the fake top, you'll notice that in the movie, they never pan up far enough to show the roof. They always kind of go like this, so you never see the real top. Dude, this is awesome. This is the street where the Ecto-1 pulls up at the end and all the Ghostbusters get out in front of this building. They had barricades set up here and there was a huge crowd of people. They were all really excited. Yeah, Ghostbusters! Then if you remember your Ghostbusters history, as they're standing in front of the building, the street starts to crack and open up, swallowing cop cars. The Ghostbusters fall into a hole. Most of that was filmed right here by piling up fake pieces of street and tilting up a cop car, all that kind of stuff. But they also recreated basically this whole block and the whole front of the building here in Hollywood, you know, back in California on a studio ranch, I think actually and technically in Burbank. And they did a dang good job because when they're cutting back and forth between this building and the fake version of this building, you really cannot tell that it's not the same street. There's crazy blizzard weather coming into New York this time instead of Gozer. Our sunny day was almost over anyways, but now the clouds are starting to block out the sun as well, so we gotta kind of hurry up here. Spook Central is definitely a very beautiful building, but once you think of it as sinister, you can definitely tell it's perfect for a sinister, evil building. It's all spiky and sort of Dark Lord looking. Wow, that is awesome. I never noticed in the movie they have this little taxi bulb up there, a little light that they can flip on that will make taxis stop in front of the building. That's a really good idea. Famously, this is where Sigourney Weaver becomes possessed and becomes Zool up in here. But let's not forget about Rick Moranis' character, Lewis, who, by the way, runs out of this building across the street at one point, right over there to Tavern on the Green, which right now has a bunch of fences all around it, so I can't get to the spot where he ran up to the window. Help me! Maybe we'll get a better look at it later on in the trip, but for now, with the sun going down, I think we only have time for one more epic spot spot. The Ghostbusters were supposed to choose the form of the destructor, and of course Ray could not keep his head clear. It just sort of popped in there. And something big and scary and very, very puffy started coming this way. It's the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Just down the street from Dana's apartment, this is the spot right here, Columbus Circle, where we first see the giant, the terrifying, the very cute Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. This is pretty crazy standing right here. Stay Puft Marshmallow Man was a huge deal back in the 80s. I feel like images of that puffy little guy were on everything. That's the shot right there. You can kind of see Columbus' statue right there in the center of your screen now. In the shot with the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, he's coming through that intersection kind of on the left there. And to make a long story short, for, you know, time's sake and also spoiler alert, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man heads right on down the street over to Spook Central down there. Where again, spoiler alert, wait a minute, it's been 34 years, you've had plenty of time. The Ghostbusters cross the streams, defeat the bad guy, and reduce the Marshmallow Man to a big falling pile of goo. Woo! That took a long time. Uptown, downtown, libraries, universities, Muppets, Spook Central, scaffolding. It was a lot harder to fit all that stuff into one day than I thought it was gonna be, but it was worth it. I lived out my childhood dream of following around the Ghostbusters, dude. They were right there with Ecto-1. Tough question for all you 80s movie nerds out there. Which car would you rather have? The 89 Batmobile, the Back to the Future DeLorean completely time machine decked out, or the Ecto-1? Dude, tough call. Think about it. Anyway, guys, I think that's gonna be about it. The sun is setting. I'm on my 7th day of no soda, so, you know, I'm a little more tired than I normally would be. And not only have I walked miles and miles and miles with my happy feet today, I've had nothing to drink and nothing to eat the whole time. We're gonna have more adventures from New York City coming right up, so stay tuned, and thanks for sticking with me today. You have done your duty.
You can go home and sleep well.
Uh-oh. I'm lost. I'm lost in New York. I'm all alone, lost in New York. Wasn't somebody else lost in New York once?
That's called foreshadowing.
Fire.